Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Take Estate Planning Docs from Zero to Notarize in No Time with Gavel and the Best Notary, featuring myself, Brittany Hernandez, and Eli Ngozi. As I mentioned, he's here all the way from San Francisco and just flew in yesterday to hang out with us today. So we're really excited to hear from him and also to have his colleague Stephanie with us as well. So a little bit about me. My name is Brittany. I'm the head of legal innovation at Gavel, and I'm so excited to kind of show you some of the things that we've been working on, as well as to kind of explain how you can follow the client journey from zero all the way through document and services delivery. If you have any questions after this presentation, feel free to reach out to me at brittany@gavel.io. I'll also mention that I am actually a lawyer as well, licensed in California, and I kind of closed my practice down to focus on legal tech and teaching other lawyers how to utilize technology in their practices, how to automate, and so on. Also, I'd like to invite Eli to introduce himself for a moment as well.
Thank you so much, Brittany. This is so exciting to be in San Diego with Gavel. My name is Eli Ngozi. As you've heard, my company is The Best Notary. We are your document concierge from Maui to Maine. What do? We help estate planning attorneys extend their reach to their entire home state and bring more client satisfaction by bringing the signing meeting to their home, either in person or remotely through Ron. We also help attorneys with their recording of deeds. We help them with their binder assembly, essentially taking away all of their back office pain points and all the friction that comes between them and happy outcomes when it comes to estate planning. So very excited to walk you through how to essentially use remote online notarization and other types of notarization in person to really bring everything together around the client, because this is an age of convenience, and that is what will set firms apart, because they build their businesses around the customer and not their offices. So happy to be here.
Absolutely. And actually, that's such a good segue into what we're going to be talking about, because you mentioned how we really focus on the customer or the client in this case, and we're putting them at the center of everything. What we want to do is make sure that our clients are satisfied. They'll keep coming back to us and so on. You mentioned Ron. We're going to go over what remote online or notarization. It's not a person named Ron. So we're going to go over first my part, which is going to be around following that client journey from initial contact to engagement and beyond, through to document automation in action with a power of attorney example. Then I'm going to pass the time over after we have a brief pause for questions to Eli, who's going to go over that Ron question around anything that you've had a question about for a remote online notarization. We're going to answer those questions. He's going to go through what that looks like. And then also we're going to go through and have him talk through in person on demand a notarization, how you can streamline that. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what Gavel is, just so we can have some framework. And then we're going to talk about that user journey and how we focus that on the client, starting from their initial point all the way through. So what is Gavel? This is a legal technology platform that serves as the automation infrastructure for the modern scalable law practice. It's an easy-to-use tool that empowers you to automate your documents, but also create internal and client-facing or external apps and workflows that allow you to increase efficiency and scale your practice. So what most lawyers do, they start with this internal document automation piece, which I'll show you, and they graduate to this idea of legal productization. So on the legal productization side, I'll show you a few examples of people who are using this tool in this way. But just know you don't have to have a client-facing app at all, but it is something that we're seeing as a trend moving forward. So when we talk about the client journey, what we're really talking about is, how does someone find you? Like, what does that process look like? And how can you automate or use tech in that process? How do they become a prospect or a qualified lead? How do we then do our conflicts checks and turn them into a client through an engagement letter, for example? And then how do we deliver legal services, products, and documents to our clients in a very seamless way? So let's go ahead and look at this journey together really quick. So when you think about how someone finds you as a lawyer, a lot of the time now in these like modern days, people will Google something, right? They're going to go to some type of search engine and they're going to look up something about their issue. And in kind of this age, what we can do is we can start to create things called lead magnets, right? And so a lead magnet could be something like a blog post or a video on YouTube or on TikTok, wherever your audience is. And what we want to do, the goal of those different marketing assets and those different pieces that goal is to bring them to your website where you have strong calls to action. And so in this particular case, I used a tool called Softer to build a website that I just built myself that looks like this, where this is my intellectual property and entertainment law website, and I have 2 calls to action. They can either contact us here and they can fill out a form where we get a message, or they can book a free consultation right away. And this is going to go straight into our customer relationship management software, which in this particular demonstration would be HubSpot. So what we want to do is we have that marketing asset or that lead generation tool, in this case, a blog. So let's say, for example, you've written a blog and you have it on your website that has the answer to part of their question, and it leads them to buy something with you or convert to being a client. So in this particular case, this isn't an estate planning example, but it still kind of tracks along what we're trying to do here. And what I like to do with these types of things is embed a Gavel workflow, which looks like this here in this particular case, because what you're able to do with Gavel is completely white label it, meaning you're able to change everything to your brand and your colors. You can have your own logos, you can have your brand colors in here, and so on. So what happens from the user side is they are reading through your blog, and what they're going to do is they're going to see this call to action to see if they might be eligible for this type of grant. And so they just answer these couple of questions. In this case, I have a few default answers already pre-filled out, so you can go through this very quickly, but they can change their answers here. They can put their different name or email or whatever else. They'll continue through. They can put their address here, for example. They can answer questions about their home information. In this case, they are going to be someone who is going to be using this grant money for this particular reason, and so on. So what they're going to do is they're going to be able to answer their questions, edit their answers here if they need to, and continue through to document delivery here. Now, what's actually happening on the back end of this particular example is the person is being evaluated based on certain conditions that I have set in this workflow, which is made by Gavel. And I'm determining whether they may be eligible for this, and I'm changing or showing or hiding different paragraphs in this letter template that will depend on their answers. So by doing this, we're actually qualifying our leads at the same time as attracting them to our websites. And so in this particular case, this person's information has automatically been included in this particular letter. And we are saying, based on your answers, you may be eligible for this. Now, if they had actually answered differently, so let's say, for example, that they said no to one of these answers, like this, for example, they'd actually not be eligible. So they're going to get a different answer. And also what's happening on the back end here is they're going to receive an email. So here you can see this person says, based on your answers, you may not be eligible. You need to be using it for these reasons. There may be other types of things, but you can book a consultation with us and we can go over that with you. So what's also happening, as I mentioned on the back end here, is this person has received an email automatically that says your eligibility decision letter from law firm is inside. It's all personalized here. Hi, Mary, thanks for doing this. Take your time to fill this out. You can click here to book a consultation with us. They can go in and they can book a paid or free consultation. Bless you, Bless you, Joe.
Sorry.
No worries. So we can see that the person has also had their letter attached here. So that way, if they navigate away from that initial page that they were on, they'll be able to go back and see it directly in their email. And we've been giving them that call to action to book a time with us, which will go straight into our CRM, which could be, Clio Grow or, Go High Level or whatever you use, Locus, Lawmatics, any millions of different things. So that's how we're able to kind of go through this first piece, which was what I was mentioning, taking someone from being a stranger to turning them into a prospect and qualifying them as a lead. Lead generation and lead qualification wrapped together in one. In the meantime, what's happening in Gavel, which looks like this when you have an account, is you're getting this information stored in what's called the data manager. Now, the data manager is going to show that this person has completed this information. And now that I have this information, when I've met with them, because they're going to book a consultation with us next, I'm going to go through that process of doing a conflict check, make sure that I haven't represented somebody, in the past that would be a conflict of interest here. And I want to prepare an engagement letter for this person. All I need to do now is choose that person's information that we've already collected from them. I can say push into another workflow. In this case, I'm going to look for one called limited scope engagement agreement. This one here, and I'm going to say push. Now, what's going to happen is all the information that we've already collected is going to pre-populate in this next workflow because we already have collected this information from them. We can see their address here, their email, their first and last name. We don't have to type anything. We're just verifying that everything is correct. I can also give this a matter name. I can have default answers and pre-programmed things that, let's say we prepare these all the time. I can pick another one and I can type in, let's say we're also going to just like check for eligibility, eligibility for other types of grants. So in this particular one, this is called a combo box. And it's also a repeating item, meaning we can add as many as we'd like. And this is really useful, especially in this estate planning context, is that you're able to, let's say, have children. So you can have, we don't know in the beginning how many children this person has. Same thing as for services. Maybe we want to have 4 services, maybe we want to have 2, and so on. So we can add as many as we'd like here. We can do any excluded services. So maybe we're going to have some information included, but we're not going to do any assistance with an appeal, for example. So let's say we only have one of those here. We can just double check our work here, continue as well. And then from here, we're going to be able to generate that letter. And we can see that here, and then we can send that off for a DocuSign signature as needed. Okay. So that's how that's going to work. We're going to see her name formatted, her email, the date is automatically pulled in. We could format the same name in multiple different ways. We have Mary Watson here, but Ms. Watson here. We can actually change out whose signature line is here and so on. So this is quite powerful because as you can see, all we really needed to do was push the information that we already had collected from this person, push it into our engagement letter. And then when we're ready, we actually have a DocuSign integration as well. We can say submit for DocuSign signature, and that's going to get sent to them automatically for signature. We can also see that in this particular case, I have what's called a Zap from Zapier working in the background to send this person an automatic email that says complete these 2 steps so we can start on your application, right? And we're saying, hi, Ms. Watson, we look forward to working on this with you. We just want you to do 2 things really quick. And what we're asking them to do is actually just to create an account on our Gavel account, you could say, and they'll get something like this, where they're going to be able to have us assign different things for them to do. For example, to start a bundle, or we can have them see their past answers. We can assign them bundles, workflows, or whatever else. And what they're going to be able to do is benefit from data persistence, which is the same thing that we benefited from when we push the information from one workflow into another, in that case of taking it from that lead magnet one where they were trying to see if they were eligible for something and pushing that into the limited scope engagement agreement when we were ready for them to be engaged as a client, right? So that's going to be that first kind of flow. But now we want to talk about this next part, which is going to be around the idea of document delivery, right? So when we're at this stage of this idea that we're going to prepare something for them. So for example, we're going to prepare a power of attorney or a will or an entire estate plan. What we can do is we can either have, let's say, a single workflow that generates more than one document. So maybe it generates an entire estate plan for your clients where it has, let's say it includes the will and the power of attorney and a particular type of trust or whatever else you want to have in there, HIPAA authorizations and so on and so forth. You can either have it all be in a single workflow. And when we're talking about workflows, I'm talking about each of these individual ones that I was showing you on the back end in the data manager, where we had the one that was the limited scope engagement agreement and the one with the that we saw on the website. Or you can create something called a bundle. So in a bundle, what you're able to do is create a series of workflows that can be done in order, can be paid as, so let's say, for example, you wanted to turn this into what I mentioned about that client-facing product where this is actually sent or assigned to the client to work on. What they're going to be doing is you can actually add a paywall either at the beginning or at any stage in the middle of the process. So you can say, for example, I want you to charge the client $250 or, call it $1,000, whatever you want it to be. We have a Stripe integration for Stripe Connect that allows you to put that paywall in front of your workflows. So you can say, client, I'm going to assign you a bundle that asks you to pay $1,000 before you begin the first 3 workflows. And then you're going to pay an additional 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever other dollars before you complete the last 3 documents and so on. So what we're going to do quickly now is actually show you what you would do if this was an internal process again, instead of the client-facing version, but you can do it and set it up either way. In this case, we go back into our data manager that we already kind of did before. We can use that same one that we did where we did the, we could do the letter, or we can do the version 2 of this demo with letter for eligibility, because this one already has their name and their address and all that. And what we're going to do is we're going to push that into another workflow, which in this case is going to be one I'm calling TBN, Uniform Statutory Form Power of Attorney. Now, in this particular case, you can see a different type of style, and that's to illustrate, like I mentioned, that you can change the colors and the style to go along with your own brand. And in this case, what you'll see is we have little section labels on the side here: your information, the agent information, and special instructions. On this your information page, that's asking for the stuff that we already have that I pushed through from here: her name and her address and her email and all that stuff. So we're never retyping in information. And you can also, as you can see, take advantage of those default values to go even faster. So in this case, we have the option to designate a single agent or more than one. So let's say, for example, we have a single agent. We can have their first and last name and their full address. If we wanted to have more than one, we can say, do you want these to act separately, or do you want them to act jointly, or anything else? Let's say jointly. We can put in the first agent's name. I'm just going to put agent one's name just to kind of keep it simple so you can see where it is in the, excuse me. I'm just going to put agent one name, agent one address, just so you can see where it populates. We can ask a continuation question. So this is another way that you can see, like in that first example with the limited scope engagement agreement, we had a repeating item where it was all on the same page. This is an example where you can collect them on separate pages. So if you want to say, do you have any more children that you'd like to add, for example? In this case, I'm asking, would you like to designate another agent? I'm going to go ahead and say yes. I'm going to put agent 2 name and then agent 2 address. And we could do more, but let's just say no. That's going to give us a chance to review these, edit or delete them, and continue through. Next, we can designate the powers of the agent. So we can say, would you like to grant the agent power over all of these following areas, or would you like to limit them? If we want to limit the powers, we can use a question type that is a multi-select. So you can see that I can have real property transactions, tangible personal property transactions, stock and bond transactions, and maybe I want to take some of these off and put these on. So I can say, by accepting and acting under this appointment, the agent assumes the fiduciary and other legal responsibilities of an agent. Let's go ahead and continue. Do I want this power of attorney to continue if you become incapacitated? Yes or no? Let's say yes. And would you like to list any special instructions? I can say yes. And this example here is of what's called question logic. So one of the most important things about Gavel is that you're able to attach logic not only to pages to say, show this page when the person's answer is yes or no, or that they've said some particular answer, but also at the question level, you can say, show this other question when someone says yes, for example, in this case. So I'm going to put just special instructions here, just so you can see where it is in the example that we're going to show you. And you can do this, customize this any way you'd like. I can also include, for example, a preview here. So I can see here's the power of attorney for Mary. Click continue below to submit a request for notary services to the best notary, because that's how this particular example is set up. I can just review this before I send it off, and I can make any changes I need to by just saying back, or I can click on each of these sections as needed to review a different section and make any changes before I send this off for them to set up a notary appointment with the best notary. So in this particular case, you can see that this has now been filled out with our client's information. We have Mary Watson, we have her address, and we have the agent's names in this kind of format here as my agents. If this was a single agent, that S would go away, same as here as well, because everything is conditional in this document based on somebody's answers. You can see that we didn't have to ask them what their initials were, because I was able to pinpoint this letter and this letter to be here on each of these without her having to do anything. I can include any special instructions here. And because I have designated more than one agent, I have said that I want them to act jointly, for example. I can also format dates like this, signed this 2nd day of May, for example, and I'm going to wait till this is ready for signature. And then I can say state of, I can make this the state that was mentioned within their previous questionnaire, as well as their county. And then this is going to be the section that Eli is going to cover, but you can see that we've already been able to put their name here so that when it goes in for notarization, we're going to be able to put in the date, the name, the signature, and the seal, as well as the person's signature here. So what's going to also happen in this particular example is I've set it up to where an email automatically gets sent over to the best notary. And it's going to say something like, Eli, can you please have these documents sent over for notarization with the best notary? Here's the email of the client, and that's going to be sent over to him. So I'm going to pause at this juncture just to double check to see if there are any questions. Thank you all so much for being here, by the way. So exciting to get to see everyone. So you're welcome to put your questions in the chat as well, so that when each of us takes kind of a moment to switch places, we can kind of take a look at those as well. But if there are no questions, I'm just going to quickly show you the back end of the Gavel platform, so that you can see kind of how this was made now that you've seen what it does, right? So when we look not only at the data manager, for example, but at other features within here that you could take advantage of is, let's say that we wanted to create a brand new workflow. What you can do is you can say new workflow here. You can either start just with questions from scratch with your own documents, and also here with the AI feature of Gavel, which is called Gavel Blueprint. And what that is going to do is it's going to allow you to drop your documents into this system. It's going to analyze what the document says and the context, and it's going to suggest various questions that you could ask, and it's going to insert the questions into your documents and create that workflow for you. Let's just start from scratch though, and I'm just going to say demo the best notary by Gavel, and then I'm going to say May 24. Let's go ahead and say create, and it's going to take you automatically over to this editor. And the reason why I wanted to show you this is to show you how easy it is for you to be able to do this yourself. So let's say, for example, you want to create the workflow that I did, where we had sort of this, let me just show you. Let's say we have this uniform statutory form power of attorney that we want to automate, for example. Now, what we could do is, in this particular case, what I actually did was I turned that PDF into a Word document where I highlighted the different conditions and instructions so that I could take them out later. And then I set it up so that I could kind of see how I wanted this to be set up. But we can refer to this. If you were going to want to use Blueprint for this instead, what you could do is you could just take that document and just literally drop it from here into here, and then it's going to go through the process of analyzing this for you. Let me just put TBN. So it's going to put on its lawyer hat. But in the meantime, what we can do while it's thinking is go back to our one here and show you kind of that difference of what happens, right? So what we want to do here is see where do we need information to go and what information do we need and what conditions do we need, right? So when we're looking at this document, what I can see is that we're going to need some information about our particular client's name and address, who they want to appoint as their agent. So we're kind of getting a sense that we need client's information, agent's information, powers of the agent, right? And then any special instructions. And that's kind of why I was able to kind of differentiate these different sections based on these different sections. So what I could do is I could give it a section title, because if this was like client facing, for example, I could say your information. If I was making this internal facing, I could say client's information, right? So let's say it's client's information. What I can do now is give this a title. Let's say like client's information, and I can just say add question. Let's say I need to ask a question about their first name, like what is the client's first name? And then I can give this something called a variable. So a variable name is going to be something like client first name. And this allows us to identify and use this variable across multiple workflows in different places in our documents, for example. For example, if I wanted to take this right now and go into my document tagger in Word with Gavel, I can say start here. I'm going to give it a second and log out and go into a different client name here. And I'm going to be able to see a mirroring of the different workflows that I'm creating automatically, right? So I can see this one here, and I can interact with the variables that I've created. So now if I want to put that question, the answer to that question in my document, all I need to do is come here, just grab where I want this to go. I go to simple variables. I can see client first name. I can make this standard uppercase or first letter capital. Let's make it uppercase, for example, and I just say insert variable. If I want to add any formatting to this, I can do that here, say underline or bold or anything else. I can save this now, and I can add this now that I have one variable in here. I can attach a template to the workflow. So let's say I want to grab this one. Let's go over to my downloads. I can come over to the document I'm working on here, which is, let me just see this one here. Let me just make sure it's the untagged version. I believe it's this one. Let's go ahead and say open. We're gonna save that to our section here. Let me just actually drop it into here. So now we've attached this document here. Let's go ahead and save this. And now that we have our one question here, what is the client's first name? And we can say Brittany, for example. I can say continue, I can review, I can continue, and then the information would automatically go into it. So this is how this kind of rapid development piece and no code works, is that I can see now Brittany is capitalized here. And we would go through our document and make sure that that was completed as we wanted to. This is what the Gavel blueprint looks like. It shows where it thinks that there is a question you might want to have turned into a questionnaire. And so you can say edit question details, and then you can say what it's already suggesting all of those things for you. You can accept or reject them, and then you can turn that into a workflow like I have here. Now my time is up, so I'm going to turn the time now over to our featured guest here, Eli. And then if you have any additional questions on the Gavel side, then you can just put them in the chat and I'll be happy to answer those, or we can come offline and do it through email. All right, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Brittany. Wow, you went through a lot of stuff really fast. My head's still spinning, but I am super impressed with what Gavel has built. We're eager to see how we can bring it to our own platform to streamline form intakes and get things moving. So thank you so much. And I'm going to jump in exactly where you left off. I'm going to bring you right into a notarized document that was notarized through Ron, and then work backwards to show you how we got there. So here we go. So we are now looking at a document. The power of attorney that Brittany was talking about has been kicked over to us from her system. And a lot of people wonder, well, remote online notarization, what is it? What does the document look like? Is it going to be like signed on paper and then scanned in and then notarized by the notary in Virginia? It looks exactly like a traditional notarized document. So here it is. We've got the signer's name. We've got a signature on it. As you can tell, it looks a little different. It's got the date and time that it was signed by Ms. Jane Doe. And then here is the notary block that you've seen before when Brittany showed us that document being prepared. So Juan is one of our notaries based in Virginia, and he assigned this document electronically through DocuSign. Actually, at this time, we were using Adobe Sign back in those days when I had moved to DocuSign. But essentially, it looks exactly like a paper notarized document. It's got his seal right here that says all the traditional things you see on a seal. And essentially, the only difference is that, Juan did not meet Jane face to face. They hopped into a Zoom call, like the same Zoom call that we're sitting in right now. And he witnessed her signing the document electronically after she passed a couple of ID verification steps, which I'll be covering a little bit later. So essentially, remote online notarization does not require any face-to-face meetings at any point of the process, and there is no paper at any point of the process. The whole thing is digital from beginning to end. If you want, you could print out the document afterwards, but essentially this is what a RON looks like. It's a PDF that looks like this. The only thing you might see additional here than you might not see in a traditional PDF is that there's a signature panel here that shows the certificate, the digital certificate from Adobe, issued by Adobe, that says that the notary who signed this document, their identity is validated by a third-party company called Identrust. So essentially, only Juan has access to a particular passcode that lets him sign this document. And anybody down the road who wants to verify whether this document is actually notarized has to prove that Juan's digital certificate is on this document. What does that mean? It means that unless someone stole that key and then used it to sign the document, that would prove fraud. So essentially, one of the biggest things you should look at in a RON provider is that they're using digital certificates. It's a wild west out there. So we recommend working with large companies or companies which have a proven methodology to use these digital certificates to prove that the person who is the notary has used their seal that was issued by Identrust, which then ties back to the Secretary of State. That said, I'm going to then back into the RON laws and how they work. So I'm going to share my entire screen here and switch over to my deck here. So I'm going to jump into the shifts that happened with um, going back to the E-Sign Act in the year 2000. Bill Clinton signed a law. This law says that any document signed electronically becomes as legally bounding as a document signed on paper. This has been around for a really long time. So a lot of us think that just because a particular entity insists on receiving a paper signature, that is a purely individual requirement because the law has made it very clear that a document signed electronically is as binding as a document signed on paper. So essentially, remote online notarization, as I mentioned before, involves the ID verification. The entire meeting happens on video. These sessions have to be recorded on video, depending on the state, between 5 years and 10 years. So you have to comply by the state that you're working with. They all have different regulations. Have to be very careful when you're vetting what states that you're going to be pulling notaries from, especially in California, where remote notaries are not quite ready to go. So here is kind of what I said before. The entire thing has to be done digitally. If you hear something about someone doing a RIN or other types of processes which involve, a notary kind of showing the notary requiring that the person signing show the document on the screen, those are not full RON notarizations. They have to be fully digital from beginning to end, but you can always print out the document after the fact. Banks, hospitals, any entity out there, going back to the E-Sign Act, these are legally binding documents. Some people might push back, but they are actually in violation of federal law when it comes to that statute, that E-Sign Act. And then there's also state rules, which I'll cover a little bit later, that show that a document notarized in one state is valid in another state as long as it's one of the 50 US states. So going to the requirements, what do we need to participate in a RON session? A computer of any type, smartphone, laptop, desktop, iPad, anything with an internet connection, and the ability to have an audio video conversation just like this. If you have those requirements, you could be anywhere. You could be on the moon. You could be, on a submarine. You could be in your car cruising in the back seat of your car. As long as that connection is good and solid, the notary can talk to you. That is all you need. Imagine how this could change your entire business if you can have your clients who are overseas connect with the notary remotely. What are the ID requirements to obtain a remote online notarization? It's very, very, very standard across most states that allow this. You need to have a credential analysis. What does that look like? It looks like someone who is the signer taking a picture of their document using an app or just showing it to the screen. The company that does credential analysis will analyze the ID across 100 different factors. Everything in this ID is being scrutinized for validity because all the systems know what every state's IDs look like, what every country's passport looks like. So in a matter of seconds, it's either going to pass or it's going to fail. So essentially, this is the first step to prove identity based on the card that's presented. And the second step is called KBA, or knowledge-based authentication. What they're doing here is they are going into your public record and pulling data and then having you answer questions about that data. Which of these streets is closest to your address? Which of these accounts have you had with these financial institutions? Which of these cars have you owned in the last 10 years? You've got about 2 minutes to answer 5 questions with an 80% pass rate. So to generate those questions, it is clear that you must have a significant footprint of data in the US. If you don't have that, then essentially that means you have to have a third party known as a credible witness who can pass both of these tests and is able to swear that they know you to be the person that you are. So once again, the requirements vary widely state by state. In California, if you do this in person, you need to have 2 credible witnesses who have ID, who can attest to your identity. In most of these RON states, it's only one credible witness, which is a great workaround. If your signer may be elderly, and maybe their memory isn't that great. Maybe their ID has expired. Maybe they never had an ID. So in those cases, Ron becomes actually kind of like a better tool as opposed to having an in-person notary who might require 2 credible witnesses. So beautiful solution when your clients are overseas. Maybe they don't have the public record data needed to generate the questions. So we are able to work around that. But sadly, some of the larger companies out there might not be able to be that flexible. So that is why it's important to evaluate your vendor on their ability to handle these edge cases. Moving on to what states allow RON. So as you can tell from this map, it's overwhelmingly most states, which is the sad thing that California still hasn't had this rule take effect for California notaries. It has gone into effect in the sense that the law explicitly says now that you can work with a notary in any of these 44 states, and that notarization will be valid and acceptable in California. This is huge. So between now and 2030, you don't have to wait for your attorneys in the office to become licensed to do RON. You can take advantage of a notary in any of these states and enjoy that convenience, enjoy that speed of access, and the additional ID flexibility that RON brings. So I am so excited to bring this to California attorneys and help them figure out how to do it. So once again, what is the components of it? It's going to be the ID verification. The documents are going to have to be prepared for signature on the signature platform. We use DocuSign. It could be Adobe Sign. It could be anything which allows you to sign documents electronically. The second step is to do the ID verification. And the third step is to have the signing meeting, have everyone sign their documents, and then it's going to lead to the recording of that video being saved for up to 10 years. The list of documents notarized is required. So essentially that is a function of that electronic journal that the notary can maintain. So it could be a third-party system. It could be an entire DocuSign repository, which lists all the documents that were notarized. Every single state has their own regulations. Some are looser, some are more strict. It's up to you to shop the best venue We like Virginia and Texas for that reason. So going back to how is this even possible? A lot of lawyers are like, how is this possible? My clients are in California and we are signing documents with a notary in Virginia. Will Virginia's notary law apply to this transaction? Will California notary laws apply? It is very simple. Going back to 1892, every state has had laws in effect that allow those notarizations from out of state to stand in their home states. There was stricter, you had to have a particular additional certification by a local official to add to that notarization. But moving on into the 20th century, as long as that document says notary public on it and it was signed by US notary, all of these states have a statute that says anything signed in another state is valid in this state. Here in California, we're relying on Civil Code 1189B, which is the real property code section of the Civil Code that says any document signed in any of the 50 states, and has been the case for a long time before Ron ever kicked in. It's just that that notarization now is being obtained with a remote notary in a different state. So we've covered that it's allowed today, but California notaries cannot do this until 2030. So as I mentioned, we like Texas, we like Nevada, we like Virginia because these states were pioneers in RON, and their rules are much laxer than the ones we find in other states. So essentially, it's important to shop carefully. Places like Iowa are very strict that the notary and the person signing must both be in Iowa, a little bit protective. So maybe that's not the place I'd go to look for notarizations when I start. Florida, when you're signing powers of attorney, you need another adult in the room besides the person who's signing for that POA to be valid. Once again, complicated, extra hoops to jump through. We recommend staying with Texas or Virginia. So why is this still not a thing? Well, it's kind of foreign. It's novel. It's like self-driving cars. It doesn't feel like it's legit or valid. Technology challenges, right? You have to go through those ID verification processes. You need a solid understanding of how to use audio video tools. KBA can be tricky because memory is a little bit funky. You might not be able to pass those questions to get your KBA approval. So all of these variable factors and privacy concerns on top of that, my documents are being uploaded to a third-party server. That is why this is still not being used widely. However, with the right partner, we can check off all of these things to provide ways to make RON suitable for your firm. A lot of companies out there doing it, some big, some small. Sadly, as I look at this right now, eNotaryLock just shut their doors down. And essentially, a lot of it is it's small companies trying to figure things out. There's a lot of individual notaries trying to figure things out. So we recommend vetting that company carefully, once again, to make sure that they're using compliant techniques and also that they are also have an empathetic approach to this because not everyone is able to navigate all those hoops that you're jumping through. So these problems you see here apply to both in-person and remote notarization. There's a lot of individual providers out there. I think the number of notaries in the US is something like 400,000. It's a lot of people out there. And it's up to you, right, to either have to do the work of vetting all of them yourself or find a company like ours that has brought the best of the notaries in one place and also manages the whole process. So, a typical RON platform expects you to bring a document, place the tags where it needs to be signed, and kind of do it on your own. So unless you're Brittany, who clearly is very adept at moving around, to document platforms, your clients might not love doing all of that. So it's a good thing to work with the partner who will do all of the heavy duty lifting beforehand. So when they show up to that RON meeting, it is quick, it is efficient, it takes 2 seconds. All they do is put a click to where the signature goes, and they're done. So when it comes to deeds for real estate, this is actually one of the biggest assets that you're going to be signing electronically when it comes to an estate plan. This is a big, I think, kind of like black hole that attorneys worry. Well, if will the county recorder accept that document? As far as I've known, I've always had to walk things in or mail in original documents. Well, guess what? Going back to I think the 90s, title companies have always been able to record deeds with the counties electronically. So a new law, I think around 2014 passed, and this allows any firm which gets the appropriate insurances is now able to record deeds electronically. We use a company called Simplifile, and with Simplifile, you simply will push the notarized document, in person or remote notarized, into this platform, make sure it meets the requirements, hit a button, and boom. In some counties, these deeds are recorded within minutes. Imagine that, not having to take your document, fill out a checkbook, write the amount, for their contract recording fees, and then send that in, and then only to hear that, wait, your amount that you sent to us wasn't correct. They're going to mail that whole document back to you, or maybe it gets lost in the mail. It is a mess. So by working with Simplifile or CSC, you can record these electronically, and I imagine not even having to have them signed on paper. The whole thing can be done digitally and recorded digitally. This is a huge time saver. Some of the remote counties you're seeing there on the bottom, those 15 counties, it's still not clear because they are not quite eligible for e-recording. But as you can tell, 43 counties at the very top, you're good to go. That's typically where 90% of the properties that you work with are going to be in anyway. So this is a great way to use Ron for those cases where your signers, let's say it's an estate that's being settled by the children of the family, and some of them overseas. We had one case where we had two kids overseas, one in Thailand, one in Italy, another one in Monterey. So that all came together beautifully using Ron because then nobody had to go to an embassy or deal with all the hassles of having to get a document signed on paper. So essentially, how do you overcome these challenges? Make sure that a client has the right tech or a plan to have someone who can help with that tech. With our back office, we can walk clients through the entire process, even if it's their first time using Zoom. And this, of course, for an additional charge, but it gives you that peace of mind that your clients will not be stuck with a process that they do not understand. And also working with notaries who have that patience to help work with those elderly clients or others who are not tech savvy. So our first run took 7 hours. I'm not kidding you. This is during the pandemic, and the raw notary was learning. The platforms were pretty funky, but eventually, over the years we've honed the process using Zoom and DocuSign to do it in 8 minutes. This is huge because we've done all of the legwork. Most platforms use a browser, which means you've got the video, the audio, and the document signatures all happening in one browser tab, which is really hard to pull off. So we've tried all of them and realized that it's better to work with existing tools that are fully mature to bring that seamlessness to their clients. So essentially, you can use Ron in California starting today. The laws vary, but most notarizations done in other states are going to be valid in this state. And it's important to listen to folks like Patricia who've done the legwork. She's one of our biggest success cases. She went from 25 signings, I think her first year with us, to 150 by offering her clients a choice of signing either in person or remotely. She meets the client where they are. So essentially, convenience is the name of the game. You can see your doctor remotely on video. You could talk to your CPA on video. You don't have to drive to a provider's office to consummate a transaction that sometimes takes months to get to. So we are very happy to be leading the charge in helping attorneys access all of the benefits of Ron. Here's some other clients we work with in different locations. We've got here Washington, California, we've got Atlanta, Georgia. So essentially, by leveraging our network of notaries nationwide, we can abstract out all the challenges and frictions of finding reliable notaries in one place. Am I doing on time? Am I doing okay on time? Wonderful. So I'm going to jump in now to show you what our platform looks like. Our platform, essentially, we have built to streamline all of this information to make it easy to A, to start working with us, and then B, to be able to submit orders quickly and then see where they are throughout the process. So a new client with us goes through about 6 steps. So we'll do an onboarding form, which I'll show you in a minute. We'll submit the first order. We ask our clients to submit an email to introduce us to their clients. It's a seamless handoff, which lets them know that we are endorsed by that attorney and essentially become an extension of their team. The client, the attorney, the paralegal uploads the documents onto our platform. And we pre-fill all the notary dates, as you saw Brittany doing earlier. We do all of that work in the background for you and your team. We also will be able to then provide updates as we go along. On the bottom right there, you can see that we have this chat box here, so you can talk our team members. They're all here. They're all available to support you. If you have any questions, then save that email because we all could use a bit less email in our lives. So that is the kind of overall onboarding process. That onboarding process is very thorough. So here is our onboarding questionnaire. We say set aside 20 to 30 minutes to get that ready, fully filled out. And we ask for very detailed things like how do you want the notary to fill out their notary journal? Because some attorneys want every document on a separate line. Some understand that they're going to be on one line as long as you have a way to capture each of these documents on a separate pre-printed section. We ask about the pronouns. Do you want them to be circled or not? We don't assume that we know how you like to run your firm and how you like to get your signings done, the order of documents being signed. We ask about, we go through a really, really in-depth process of what to do in case there's a challenge with the documents. What kind of paper do you want to use? We ask you about binders. Do you want us to do a binder for you? If you do, then we go into a lot of details about the binder preferences because we want to essentially remove all of the minutia that goes into getting an estate plan ready for to return to the client. So we do all of these things for our clients. How do you want the documents to be ordered? If the two people, husband and wife, do you want the wife, the husband and the wife? We really get down into every single detail based on what we've seen around our other clients. Some attorneys have very specific procedures that are pretty well documented. Some kind of are solo shops and they've kind of just been flying by on their own. It's all in their head. So this process lets us get the process written down because now they're going to start to delegate it to us. So we become the extension of that attorney and a thought partner and how they're going to improve that process as they go along. So we then here will see how a new order submission looks like. As you've seen, tools like Gavel can let you collect information. You can pipe that information in directly into our platform. And you can see that once again, we get really detailed. Are we recording documents? How many signers do you have? Does it need a binder or not? Here we're asking if you've reviewed ID before you draft the documents. We have seen that most attorneys do not keep IDs on file. And when they draft documents, they go by the name as it appeared on the deed, which is the biggest asset in the client's estate. And that can be very tricky because if the client's ID has less information than the document that the attorney has drafted across the entire estate plan, guess what? You can't notarize them unless they have a credible witness. And that can be really hard to do on the day of the signing. So over time, we've built all of these safety checks to make sure that we are being, once again, your partner that's embedded that can anticipate problems before they happen. So here we ask for the name as it appears in the document, so we can then compare that with what the ID says, and we do that for you if you haven't done it already. And we ask if it's a emergency situation, which means we can expedite that for you. In California Bay Area, we can do signings in as little as 48 hours. In most places, we ask for 4 business days because we want to make sure that everything is done properly. We proofread documents for our clients to make sure that everything goes smoothly. We want to make them look good because a small mistake can sometimes throw off an entire relationship with the client. So we ask for the date, we ask for other instructions, and once that goes in, we can then pop into our appointments screen here, and here we'll be able to see what that status of that signing is. So I'm gonna,
While you do that really quick, I'm just going to point out a quick question from
sure,
Joe in the chat.
sure.
Thank you for your question, Joe. He says, forgive me if I missed it, but where does Texas stand on the validity of wills, trusts, powers of attorney, and other estate planning documents being signed electronically for Texas?
Great question, Joe. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop into my great timing. Here is my list of states that have passed electronic wills. So I'm going to Brittany about this earlier. So it's about 10 states, and as you can see, Texas is not one of them. So what that means is you would still have to do that document on paper. Uh, Unless you're like some of our estate planning attorneys in California who are saying, hey, listen, in 10 years, it's all going to be electronic, right? If this is the direction that things are headed in. And in California's code, it doesn't technically say it has to be on paper or it has to be in person. It just says witnessed by 2 adults. So the answer to that question is, it's at your own discretion. You might decide to do it because, the probate code says typically if the original will is lost, a copy could be used. So it is really up to that lawyer and their risk tolerance and how well they have funded all the other documents and that all the other assets in that trust to determine whether that becomes a risk they're willing to take. So we recommend for that situation a hybrid transaction. The hybrid transaction lets us do everything electronically: trust, power of attorney, healthcare directive, assignments, everything else, HIPAA. And then we bring in two people, or sometimes three in the case of Texas, into the room, and we do that will on paper and only the will on paper. Huge savings of paper, huge savings of many different things that can go wrong. So our hybrid product is now live. We've had about 3 clients who have decided to jump into that, and that way your cost will be in between a fully remote signing and a fully in-person signing. So we like to recommend doing an in-person, or rather a hybrid, if you want to be a bit more conservative based on your risk tolerance.
That's such a great answer. Thank you so much. We
Of
have about
course.
4 minutes left. So I just wanted to open the floor just quickly while we have both of us here to questions. So if there are any questions, feel free to also post them in the chat. Thank you, Joe, for all of your great questions as well. Do you mind if I go ahead and wrap us up? Do you have any other closing thoughts before I wrap us up? I'm going to do a last 2 slides.
Yeah, just to say that the time to take advantage of these technologies and these new ways of doing business is now, because most companies are jumping in both feet and really seeing a lot of traction and increasing their client reach and increasing their client satisfaction. The time to do it is now, not wait until 2030 hits for California attorneys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping us up. Thank you so much, Eli, for that great presentation as well. I'm glad we were able to do this together. For next steps, what you can do is you can start your free 7-day trial of Gavel at gavel.io and start building your first workflow out today. You can try out Gavel Blueprint like I showed you. You just drop your templates into there and they'll populate that workflow for you. Or you can try starting from scratch as I showed you as well. You can also get in touch with Eli for your first The Best Notary order. Thank you so much for being with us today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, Brittany Hernandez at brittany@gavel.io, or check out more about our website at gavel.io, or you can reach out to Eli directly. You can see his email here, and you can check out The Best Notary at thebestnotary.net. Thank you all so much for being here. We're grateful for your time.
No, this was amazing. Brittany, thank you for having me. Thank you for introducing me to Gavel, and looking forward to serving all of your attorneys to help you expand your practices.
Amazing. Thank you so much. If you can end all for us, that'd be perfect.
Awesome.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.